On March 13th, 2015, It Follows, written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, was released in the United States. This year, that movie turns 10, and to commemorate that milestone, I took a look back on a movie that I really enjoyed when it came out, but has only proven more impressive over years of rewatches and deeper consideration. This is going to mostly be a thematic discussion, but I'll obviously be going over plot points in a way that presumes you've already seen this film. So yeah, heavy spoilers ahead. Consider yourself warned. And really, if you haven't seen It Follows, just go watch it and then come back to this, because this movie is really, really great. It Follows stars Micah Monroe as Jay in her breakthrough role. Although, shortly before this, she was also in The Guest with Dan Stevens, and that was really good too. Since then, she's starred in quite a few notable indie horrors, including Greta, Villains, Watcher, Significant Other, and most recently she had a phenomenal performance in Longlegs. It also stars Keir Gilchrist, Daniel Zavato, Jake Weary, Olivia Lucardi, and Lily Sepp. Sorry if I got any of those names wrong. Okay, so a quick recap of the basic premise here. It Follows tells the story of a nameless, shape-shifting demonic entity that will follow someone until it catches up to them and kills them. What makes it start to follow someone? Sex. Yes, it could be described as an evil STD that gets passed from person to person sexually. If it's following you, you can sleep with another person and then it'll start following them instead. But if it then catches them and kills them, it'll immediately set its sights back on you until you either pass it on again or get caught yourself. It doesn't run, it doesn't hide, and no one can see it but you, and others further down the chain who have already seen it, we learn. It just walks directly towards you in a steady straight line until it catches up to you. Where did it come from? How did this begin? Can anything stop it? We don't know. We just know it's always out there and always moving towards its next target. Anyway, this is how the movie was pitched to audiences in the trailers, and you can absolutely watch it just through this lens and have a fantastic time. It does a great job of paying homage to some of the best slow-moving horror villains of history, like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, while also giving a very fresh new angle to the age-old puritanical trope of sex in horror films being a death wish. As Scream famously taught us, there's maybe no better way to guarantee you won't survive than to have sex during a horror movie.
Number one, you can never have sex. Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Even in popcorn, sex equals death, okay?
There are some great jump scares, most notably the tall man suddenly appearing in the bedroom doorframe, which has become near iconic at this point. So good. And it's a really well-shot, well-written, well-acted piece of indie horror. It's also got an absolutely killer electronic score, reminiscent of 80s John Carpenter, made by Disaster Piece, that you could probably listen to without ever seeing the film and still really dig. And even with all of these nods to vintage horror put together, it still really feels unlike anything you've seen before. Anyway, those are the basics, but the more you think about It Follows, especially after repeat viewings, the more you realize there's way more going on here than this whole killer STD angle. And I don't necessarily think there's a singular correct reading of what David Robert Mitchell wants viewers to take from this film, but after 10 years of rewatches, here's what I think. Alright, so first of all, so many things in this world are just a little off. We learn this is set in suburban Detroit, but we don't get told a year. And that's because this movie seems to exist out of time. Cars and houses look like they're from the 70s. Everyone's watching black and white horror movies from the 50s on televisions that look like they're from the 80s. When two college kids go on a date, they wind up at a movie theater showing 1963's Charade starring Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. And while waiting for it to start, an old woman is playing a church organ? And alongside all that, one character named Yara is reading a book on a digital screen in the shape of a clamshell that also looks like it might be a cell phone. I noticed a lot of these things on my first viewing, but by the end of the movie I had just chalked it up to setting a weird, unsettling tone. But now, after multiple viewings, I think Mitchell wants us to understand that this wasn't just a thing that happened at a certain time in the past, or something that will happen in the future. Whatever this is, it has always existed, and will always exist. Whatever this it is that's following, it's timeless. Speaking of that clamshell phone Kindle thing, Yara pretty much spends the whole film reading The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a novel about a good and kind-hearted man faced with the consequences of being surrounded by a society full of conflict, desire, and ego. Kudos to Wikipedia for that very brief summary of The Idiot. She drops a quote from the book during an early scene just before Jay returns from her fateful date with Hugh.
I think that if one is faced with inevitable destruction, if a house is falling upon you, for instance, one must feel a great longing to sit down, close one's eyes, and wait.
Interesting. She drops this line to virtually zero reaction from her friends. They don't get it. How could they? They're kids. They're not thinking about their own mortality. And Jay was just like this herself earlier in the movie. We see her teasing her sister on the couch while her friends are watching monster movies and laughing at farts. But now, moments after this passage is read, Jay arrives back home from a life-changing date and is forced to reckon with her own inevitable destruction. As Jay grapples with her new horrifying reality, a constant struggle begins. She runs, she tells her friends, she gets most of them to believe it pretty fast. She shoots it, and then she ultimately decides to pass it on to a willing friend / former sexual partner named Greg, who clearly doesn't totally believe all of this, but wants to make her feel safe. When she then sees Greg murdered by it, having taken the form of his half-naked mother, she runs off and finds 3 random men on a boat. And though it's not shown, I believe she swims out there and has sex with one or possibly all of them as well. A true rock-bottom act of desperation if I've ever seen one. We don't know if she tried to explain the rules of this nightmare to them, but in either case, this only buys her a small amount of time. And as she leaves home with her friends to try a new plan to stop or kill this stalking presence, she sees it on her roof, having taken the form of a middle-aged naked man, and she barely even reacts. As her destruction becomes more inevitable, her longing to sit down and wait is growing. After a mostly pathetic attempt, honestly, to destroy it by luring it into a swimming pool and then electrocuting it, Jay seems to realize there's no way they're going to kill this thing, and they have no choice but to play by the rules. After resisting for a long time, Jay finally agrees to have sex with her childhood friend Paul, her first kiss, a nice symbol of her lost innocence, so that he will be the one followed. Paul is then seen cruising past sex workers, presumably to find someone to pass it along to who will quickly spread it further. Yara, having been accidentally shot during that whole misguided pool plan, gives the film its final spoken lines from a hospital bed with another quote from the idiot.
"And the most terrible agony, knowing for certain, your soul will leave your body and you will no longer be a person. And that this is certain. The worst thing is that it is certain."
So maybe this evil entity following Jay around is nothing more than death itself. And maybe we only really notice it's there when we've grown up enough to really understand our own mortality. And as soon as we acknowledge the certainty that one day we'll cease to exist, we can't help but live our lives haunted by it. Okay, so we're getting to the deeper meaning here about the inevitability of death, but there's more to unpack. When Jay goes on that movie date with Hugh, who we later learn is actually Jeff using a fake name, I'm gonna call him Jeff from now on, they play the trade game, where they take turns silently picking someone from the crowd that they'd trade places with if they could. Anyone for any reason, and the other person has to guess who it is. Jeff picks a young boy at the movies with his parents, and talks about how he misses that feeling of having your whole life ahead of you. Total freedom, he calls it. Not only is this people-watching game a great bit of foreshadowing for what's to come, but it sets up a beautiful parallel with Jay, who immediately post-coitus with Jeff tells him how we used to dream about being old enough to go on dates, and I had this image of myself holding hands with a really cute guy. It was never about going anywhere really, just having some sort of freedom. Now that we're old enough, where the hell do we go? Jeff, already being followed by this entity, has seen the reality of impending doom following him all around, and he wishes he could have the freedom of naivety. But of course, as Jay remembers, no child feels free. They want to escape the reach of their tyrannical parents, see the world for what it truly is. And when they do, as Jay does moments after delivering this monologue, then all they want is to go back to that childlike state. It's no coincidence that as Jay tries to wrap her head around her newly discovered fate, she runs to a playground. When she and her friends find Jeff and try to get more information, she's picking individual blades of grass and laying them across her knee. It's something I remember doing as a kid. She's desperate to feel like an innocent child again. It's a beautiful example of the horrible paradox of growing up and the loss of innocence that we're all doomed to face. This idea is also really well illustrated by the parents in the film, or should I say the lack of parents. All of our primary characters are either high school or college aged, and all of them seem to have deeply troubled parents. Jay's dad is MIA for unknown reasons, we think he's dead, and her mother is really only seen as a background character, either drinking wine or passed out. Greg leaves his home for an extended period of time and notes that his mom won't even notice he's gone. Are these just bad people? Or are they possibly also struggling with the same sort of awareness that there's an inevitable demise potentially right around the corner? Okay, I know I've said a lot, but we still have to talk about the final scene, which really puts one final beautiful point into focus. Since Jay learns about it, her only goal has been to make it go away, either by killing it or finding someone to pass it to and make it their problem. Paul has taken it away from Jay because he genuinely cares about her. Jay didn't want Paul to get involved because she saw him as innocent, and it pains her to think that she would be corrupting him. But even if we want to, we just can't stay innocent in this world. And having sex with someone isn't a bad thing if you aren't doing it purely to temporarily forget you're gonna die someday. By staying with someone and sharing a bond, we acknowledge that we're all in the same terrifying boat. In the final scene of the movie, Jay and Paul are slowly walking hand in hand down the street. They aren't looking around for the it that has been following them, even though there is someone behind them who very well could be it. They're just together. They're taking comfort in each other's presence. By the logic of the movie, Paul will be next in line before Jay, but Jay can still see it approaching, so by staying together, they can actually help protect each other. Being with someone is scary. Death could come for one of you at any time, and then you're alone, which is even scarier. But if we support each other and care for each other until that ominous figure on the horizon ultimately arrives, that might just be as good as we get in this life. So for me, It Follows is about growing up. It's about losing your innocence and desperately wanting it back, but you can't have it back. It's about realizing that nothing will stop death from ultimately tracking you down and doing what it does to everyone when it's their turn. It's about accepting our inevitable destruction and finding a little comfort in the people who we care about and who care about us, while we sit down, close our eyes, and wait. Come what may. Thanks for listening, and thanks to David Robert Mitchell for making this really exceptional film.